Thank you all um, for those who've joined us. There's Sandeem. Hi. Thank you. You're still on mute, but there you are. There you are.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to do blurry background because I'm at my mom's house and there's so much stuff here. But I
Actually,
didn't manage.
That's fine. Thank you. And I know you're on Sandeem is joining us from a different time zone in the evening. So good evening to you and thank you for being here.
I wish I'd
Um,
learned to do blurry background.
it
But
looks,
yeah, but that's kind of I had like this underwear drying here. I was like,
Oh, okay.
maybe we don't want to see that.
well, you can see where you all are really really working and living, which I think is actually
Yeah.
is good. Um, uh, so thanks for those in the room for joining us. We love this conversation about Cape Verdean identity and contemporary art, and more specifically, artistic expressions of the Cape Verdean diaspora. This conversation is part of a greater series of Zoom events related to our Cape Verdean contemporary exhibitions that are celebrating and exploring Cape Verdean identity through the lens of contemporary art and community storytelling. These exhibitions are part of a larger commemoration of the 50th anniversary of Cape Verdean independence from Portugal, which is celebrated this past July. Today in our program, we have two artists whose work is included in the exhibit Claridad, Cape Verdean Identity and Contemporary Art. That's on view at the museum through December 7th. And they are Christian Gonzalez and Sandeem Mendes. They are joined by filmmaker and historian Dr. Claire Andrade-Watkins. Thank you all for being here, for taking time out of your schedules, for sharing your perspectives with us. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by asking each of you to briefly introduce who you are and what you do, and then I'll start putting forth a few questions for us to get the conversation started. Claire, I'm going to start with you, if you would.
Actually, I'd like to go last because my birthday's Friday, which makes me officially the oldest one in this Zoom.
Oh,
Well,
So I get to be the real Cape Verdean Donna Madrina of the diaspora and say, I'd like to go last and listen to um, um, our community, local and global first. And then I get to, stand on the.
sure. Well, then I think we're going to put you on the spot, Sandeem, and you can go first.
Oh, because I'm the
I don't,
youngest.
yes.
we'll say that.
Age
I
is a
mean,
state of mind. Remember that.
that's true, that's true. Even though next year's will be 40, so that's kind of like strange, but yeah. Okay, I go first. Well, my name is has already been shared. I live and work in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. I'm a fine artist who has like a practice that's surrounded by this question of actually this research of cultural identity. And in my practice, I investigate the notion of being born in a country where at home is a different culture, where you when everything is like how do I say shared with that, and actually just trying to, like, my generation who is in this position, trying to find our own place or home, or where is home, or where can we fully, or yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people share with me. And my practice is very concept driven, where the idea is actually that dictates which medium I should use. So, for example, in the exhibition in the Whaling Museum, there's like photography, but there's also textile printing, and those are all just ways for me to try to tell the story. Um, is that a bit it?
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll get into more later. But
Yeah.
Christian?
Hi, Christian Gonzalez. I'm a Providence-based artist. My medium is sculpture. So I chose sculpture because I liked its immediacy and fluidity. I primarily work in clay and plaster. I don't think what else I can say.
That's fine for now. I
Okay.
think Yeah, a brief introduction, and I'll ask you to get a little more detailed in a second here. And so Claire, that leaves you.
Thank you. My name's Claire Andrade-Watkins. I'm a second generation born Cape Verdean from Fox Point, Providence, Rhode Island, which was the first permanent settlement of Cape Verdeans in Rhode Island. My chosen medium as a profession is cinema, film. My training is as a historian and Africanist, specializing in French, Francophone, and Lusophone African cinema. And I chose cinema as a way of mitigating the perception of having an absent story or narrative in the official history and timelines. So, as a classically trained historian and archivist, there was nothing there about us. And so when I left Providence in 1970 to go to college in Boston, my parents still lived in the house where I was conceived, born, and raised this Friday, over 70 years ago. And then something called urban renewal and gentrification destroyed over 3 generations of our history. And I call that post-traumatic displacement disorder, which became the catalyst on this journey to how to tell the stories in a way that was sustainable, which meant doing my research using archives and history to reconstitute our story. So my body of work that I've chosen is cinema and digital platforms to create an accessible repository of first voice history told by us, about us. So, and I'm sitting here in my studio in Pawtucket because what I do is legacy work as the child of the diaspora from Cententown, Boa Vista, and Brava. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. That's great. I think each of you touched a little bit on kind of what you do, or maybe why you do it, the type of medium you work in. But Sandeem, we'll go back to you to talk a little bit more about maybe some specific artworks. And you talked a little bit about why your art seems to be dependent on the project, right? Or the theme or what you're trying to get at. So maybe talk a little bit more about some of the textile work that is in the, not only what's in the exhibition, but kind of that kind of work that you do, and then some of your photography work.
Okay. So when we look at my practice in the sense of actually where I started a long time ago with drawing as a kid and was drawing a lot. When I went to art school, photography came into play. And for me, photography became very interesting for me to work with because of its as maybe Claire was also talking about the archival um, I say a characteristic of photography, where for me also it became very interesting to work with because of how I could use photography to fill in those gaps that was like lost or non-existent in my personal history. And also to the stories that my parents were able to share with us here at home, and then just trying to filling those gaps. And I think textile actually came more into play also as a form of archiving actually, because I started this research project that was about symbolism in textile and how textile has kind of lost its value of archiving stories. And I think, for example, I think storytelling is like maybe one of the red line in my practice, and all the time I try to find ways of how to what is the best way to tell this story. And this one of the works that I made for this exhibition is based on a story that my mom shared with me, that she again heard from her father. So it's a story that has been passed down through generations, but it was all through word of mouth. And this fear or this concern I kind of have of like when this generation of my mother is not here anymore, where do these stories go? And especially being in Rotterdam and being exposed to other cultures here, and how are we, this generation here, dealing with this history that has been passed down through word of mouth. And I think that is when I kind of understood my one of my yeah, roles as an artist, how I can actually use my practice to archive these stories. And I think textile in that sense became so interesting for me, because it started actually from a textile that I got from my mother, that was from my grandmother. And I only had one time saw her, and I felt this like right away connection with her. But then sadly she passed away really quick after that, and I think I was like 14 or something. So the only thing that I really got from her was this textile, this panutera, and I cherished it as if it was, as if she was really with me. And I think when I lost this textile, it felt like as if I lost her too. And I think that was very this line of how this object can actually, or this everyday use object could signify, yeah, be so important.
Yeah.
And I think that is how textile came into play in my practice. And if I look at my photography, I still think in images. I still visualize it as a photography, as a photo, but then finding ways to um, or retell or imagine stories that have been lost, or um, mm, so it's really a way of I think archiving, of not getting these stories lost, and sharing it with here and with whoever, and trying to keep close, and yeah. So
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I think before we got started, Claire used that exact same word, this idea of archiving stories and community and history, and especially when there is not maybe like this one institution, this one place, then it's in the community, with the
yeah,
historians, the people living, to archive these experiences for future generations, and I think
yeah.
that's very poetic. Do you mind sharing what the story was that your mom shared with you, the textile that's in the exhibit, what that story is?
Yeah, sure. So my mom told me that when she was really young, her father used to tell stories, or actually read from a book. And this book was something that was passed down through the generations, through the male line, actually. So he got this book from his father, and like this. And because my grandfather at that time was the only one who could read and write, he was then really, in that sense, important for the community. And this was in Santiago, in Chada Grande. And she said, like, the scene of, like, when it's full moon, there will be like a lot of light. So then he would go outside, and the whole like village would come and listen to him telling these stories. And one of these stories was the stories of, he would be saying that the story of Viva Branca. And he would say, like, a snippet of it was like, there will be a time, there will be a lot of Viva Brancas in Cape Verde Islands. And my mom specifically remembers this story, because she was like, as a girl, like, really like, okay, what is Viva Branca? What does it mean? And she was really asking a lot about questions about this story. And he would just explain, like, there will be a time, there will be a lot of Viva Brancas in Cape Verde, and that means that these are women who were left behind by their husbands, who went to Europe to find, like, ways of working, and with the promise that the husband will send money, and there will be like a moment, there will be they will reunite, if she would be brought to Europe, or he would come back, and something like that. But then with this Yuva Branca is this idea of that the husband actually never comes back. He actually starts a whole new family in Europe. But the women are still married to the husband, and they stay loyal, and they actually stay in this waiting mode a bit. But because they stay loyal to the husband, they don't move on with their lives. They don't remarry or anything. So then they are being called by the community as viuva brancas. So this idea of not the husband is not has not passed away, as you know, like in Cape Verde, it's like they wear black, but they just be themselves, but they are being called viva brancas because it's like this longing for someone that is not there. And my mom said that she actually had aunts in her family that were called like that. So for me, this story, yeah, it stayed with me because it was such um I think in the beginning when she shared with me, I didn't understand why it was so important to remember this and do something with it. But I tend to kind of follow my instinct that when something stays with me, I kind of need to figure out why. So then I tend to make work about it so that I can do a bit research. And I think for me, the story was so important to share because I felt like even though she was telling it from this idea of when she was young and then she saw it kind of like coming alive, this story in her community in her family. I felt like in some ways and in many ways it's still something that I feel is like prominent in our culture, where I feel like that the wives in that sense they are in a way, especially in Cape Verde, in a certain generation, are like mainly busy with their family and working and surviving and those things, and the men tend to kind of like be in a way very separate from the family, and I think I felt like it was important to share this story to see like how this has actually influenced us here, and how this independency that we kind of like celebrate over this female Cape Verdean identity of being strong and being, can do anything, but but our yeah, on what is this based, if this is like one of the things that actually feels very sad in some ways.
Yeah.
So so I wanted to archive this
Yeah.
and actually did it, like actually put her in this, especially in this installation. It was really like in an altar kind of form where I wanted to celebrate her, to kind of like um, get her out of these hidden stories and put her up front and kind of like have a way of maybe igniting conversations about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's, I know it's very personal and I think very touching. I'm gonna switch over to you, Christian, then, and ask you to talk a little bit more about maybe a few works that you've had. You talked a little bit about why that you like working in sculpture, maybe why, and just kind of different works you've created and kind of what's inspired them.
My work is probably more personal. It comes out of a more emotional place for myself. I think if you look at a lot of my work, the figures are very isolated, they're very solitary.
Mm.
And I think that comes out of my personal experience of trying to reconcile this idea of assimilation. Growing up, my parents very much encouraged me to assimilate into the dominant culture, and then feeling very rejected from that. So it's really been sort of, I don't know, maybe the last 10 or 15 years, I'm sort of coming back to, you know what, let me look back to my Cape Verdean roots and start looking back at Cape Verdean ancestries and looking at my Cape Verdean ancestors and looking at their migration and thinking about, um, you know, their isolation as they came over. I happen to have a book that one of my great aunts wrote, and in the first couple of chapters, she talks about her mother coming from Cape Verde as a widow to America, remarrying, having a family, but not being able to speak English and being really isolated in the community that she was in Onset, and moments where she was not surrounded by other Cape Verdeans. Fortunately, she was able to move back into other neighborhoods where there were more Cape Verdeans, but it sort of went back and forth for her. So I think also the way I regard it is, you know, Cape Verdeans were sort of a transitory people. You know, we were people stolen from Africa, brought to the Cape Verde Islands, intermingled with the Portuguese colonials, which is, you know, fairly recent in history as a people. We're a really sort of recent formation of people, and now we're a recent nation. And the idea of being transitory, that also we're moving around the world. We're always on the move. We're always recreating ourselves. But we remain intrinsically, or there's an identity of self of Cape Verde, right? We've taken all these things, but yet there's a essence, if you will, that we carry with us. It's I think with my sculpture, I'm always trying to get down to sort of the essential element. I think that's sort of evident in some of the titles. So some of the works you'll see at the museum is our ancestor, which was me thinking about the ancestors, which I don't know. There's so many names you don't know. There's some you do, but who were these people and what flows down from them into us? There's another piece called Crossing, which is about my father's passing, but it's also about my grandfathers and great-grandfathers. And in terms of, it's sort of a dual meaning because it has a crossing of coming from Cape Verde to America to create a new life, and also the crossing of this world existence into the next metaphysical existence. So again, always that transitory theme and idea. Does that make sense? I hope.
No, that does. Thank you. Yeah, and I know that in us giving tours to local community members and different people, I think a lot of people have really just that feeling of the generational kind of part of the crossing work has spoken to a lot of people, and that it is very personal, but then also speaking to this the heritage of your family over time, and the metaphysical nature, that idea of going into the unknown, the after. Like, I feel like a lot of people, that's spoken to a lot of folks. Thank you. And Claire, tell us about, I mean, I feel like you've been working in the community, just producing really wonderful films, and spreading the word. Can you tell us about your work and your films that you've made and your archiving?
Well, first, I want to just thank both Christian and Sandine for these beautiful testimonies. And I think I want to emphasize, I want to disrupt the notion, before I introduce myself, of time as a linear concept. As a post-colonialist, time nonlinear means that all of us in this window are basically coexisting at a same moment, from the original moment of that space called Terra that was created by violent historical collisions in 1462. All of us are in some way a direct descendant of that 500 years of collective memory. And I want to emphasize again, as I'm listening to both of you, how it's that subliminal memory, which is not kind of, something passed generation to generation. That is our gift of a diaspora community that from the very beginning has been forced to be in a permanent state of impermanence globally. And it is no mistake that as me and many of the elders in my community talk about, women are the culture bearers of memory. And you find this across the diaspora. And as a historian, which comes to me in my work, the notion to disrupt is that we have no history. What we as artists are, we become catalysts for change, where we are art and artists, not as a noun, but as a verb. Because we are stewards of memory as artists. And I'm hearing that from Christian and Sandim, if I'm saying that correctly. Even though we're continents apart, there is a coherence in how we cherish and have the same valuable memories that we're bringing forward. It's not a mistake. So the name of my company is SPIA, which means to see in Creole. And it's a double entendre, because so much of the Cape Verdean world is that we are always living in the shadow of other realities that we have to adapt. We dance between raindrops. So our experience as the major community of the diaspora is an American story in the United States, which brings with it a host of challenges, particularly in the 20th century, of navigating issues of race, language, and culture, isolation and survival, and resilience. So I have chosen film as the most honest way of engaging with memory as a trained historian, but also a filmmaker, with craft visually and with audio, as a descendant of the community that started the institutions of survival in the 30s, okay, in the Depression era, the Local 1329, the first Black, predominantly Cape Verdean union. There were no jobs for us, so we created our own union. The San Antonio Association, created in 1934, the first Cape Verdean Beneficent Association that provide membership, health, and death benefits. There was no Social Security. We created our own. Part of my job is to uplift our inherent memory attributes of survival and resilience, not of trauma and destruction. That has never been part of who we are. So as a filmmaker, me and my team of Taquan descendants are dedicated to preserving our history as we lived it, collecting the archival assets, but most importantly, contextualizing and interpreting them. Most of the people who like to collect stories about us or tell stories about us are not with us, don't speak the language, and the danger 2 generations out is that who we are is going to be distorted because we're dealing with issues of intellectual property, who owns our story, who tells it. So for me, it's how do I tell a story in the last 40 years of all of the elders of the community who trusted us, one, to preserve their assets of primary source documents, to index, preserve, contextualize, and then to create the narratives that tell a story of our humanity, not our trauma. Some Kind of Funny Puerto Rican is a phenomenon. It's not just a film, it's a movement. It took 20 years to make it. And everybody in that film is now an ancestor. But before I released that film, all of the elders of the community came to see a work in progress because they trusted me to get it right, but it wasn't going to be right unless they told me it was. And when they told me in April of 2005 at the work in progress, they came from the Cape, Onset, New Bedford, of course, Providence, they said, you got it right. That's our story. So I can step back. So at the end of the day is, what is the work that we are doing as artists that's sustainable? It's not about us. It's about the shoulders we stand on. What's really going to matter for me is the seeds that are planted today are going to blossom 40 years after me and my team step back, but we will have protected the story as we lived it for the descendants of the diaspora, but also for the rest of the Americans who don't know about this unique American story of voluntary immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa who arrived on their own ships that they owned. Cape Verde has never asked anybody about how to survive. We figure it out. And we cherish those memories as our family heirlooms, as that cherished book, that one kind of um, textile, that one photograph, that one story. We're we're stewards. And we always go back to that space. And I'm thinking about what Christian said. At some point, there is something about Nyantera as a mythical place that draws all of us, no matter how many generations of the diaspora away. There's this magical place called Nyantera that's always waiting there for us to connect us with our own ancestors and our soul. We are very blessed. We're a small diaspora. We are basically the heart of a diaspora of forced migration, violence, and hardship. And we've turned lemons into lemonade. Every community we've gone to in the world. Some kind of funny Puerto Ricans traveled around the world. When I took it to Mozambique and met the Cape Verdean Association there, my goodness, it was like Fox Point or the Cape, the same community, the food, the looking out for one another. Our culture has been our survival asset for generations. And that's our gift in Rotterdam, Seekonk, Pawtucket. And thank you for allowing us to meet in this Zoom today. I think it's beautiful. And all of my films, by the way, are on Canopy. We use and leverage digital tools and platforms, so our story of excellence is available. So our new platform is www.downthepoint, DOWNTHEPOINT.com. Follow us in our legacy work for the Taquat and Cape Verdean community. Please share it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I will.
Yeah.
Gonna put that in the chat, Claire, just so everyone can, I
Please
think
do.
I spelled that right.
Pass it
Yeah.
on. And that is our weapon of the future, is our digital memory. And me and all of us are now in our 70s. We're now the elders in the community. We're stewards. Our success isn't about us. We have goals, we stay in our lane. We use the word "and" as a catalyst of inclusion. It's about the "and," not that the story was wrong or incomplete. It was incomplete. We're just adding the and with our own agency, telling the story. And intellectual property. Own what you do. Contextualize what you do, that you do the notes. You establish the naming protocol for your work. You give non-exclusive rights. You never give exclusive rights to any institution or museum or library, ever, ever, ever. You share with wisdom of our ancestors. You share what you can to expand the education, but you never give up what you own, which is your assets. No shade on the Nantucket or the Bedford Museum. Institutions are meant to have a mission of permanent collection. That's okay. We can't afford easily archival budgets, but we can collaborate in ways that are more forward-facing in how the connections happen. We need each other.
Yes, thank you. Very true, Claire.
We're not enemies, but we're not stupid. Well, some people need to learn a little bit more. I've gotten better in how I speak, but as an elder, you don't have time to waste in mistakes that can't be undone. And there's an urgency as the elders in my generation are passing, and we're now elders,
Yes.
to have an urgency in passing on lessons that people can either choose to learn or not.
Thank you.
Definitely. I don't know if I said in, earlier correspondence that I wanted you all to have a chance to ask questions of each other throughout the conversation, if anything came up. And so just, if you have a question for anyone, just say it, just pop it up. Did you have something, Sandy?
I'm thinking, because I'm really soaking up everything that's been said, and there's like this thing that I felt when I went there actually for the opening and building up work, where I got in contact with this community, that I was like, oh, I wish we could, like, how can we connect better, you know? Because I think a lot of us here in Rotterdam, we know about the community in America, there is, but I'm just hoping that we can expand that more and share things that I feel like that we resonate so much with each other, but there's a different experience to it. And I think that that's something that I'm just soaking up a lot and just trying to. So the question will come.
Yeah, no problem. Something I wanted to just throw out there is kind of one of the points we wanted to make in the exhibition is that, I mean, this is with any, any community, but that even with these similarities and these kinds of maybe similar diasporic experiences, that each artist has their own visual identity, right? There are different things that have formed your experiences and that influences your art. And so, and that Cape Verdean art is not monolithic in nature, that it doesn't mean one thing, that it is this diverse array of experiences, which is why we wanted artists who worked in different mediums, who are of different generations, who come from different places, who, at its simplest, like different movies and music, like all these things that make you who you are and your family have informed your art. And so I just wanted kind of each of you to talk a little bit maybe about other things in your identity, since they are multifaceted, that have influenced your artwork, that and that you can see in the things that you create.
Well, as the oldest one, I'm going to start quick and then jump off.
Okay.
Because I started in 1970 in college, there was no such thing as African American studies departments. There was nothing about history for us. So the circuitous route, the only thing about Cape Verdeans at that time was, in Melville and Moby Dick, there was something about a Black Portuguese. That didn't say anything about the 31st cousins I had on each side, that we had when we on eggs at Granny's house on Sunday. We'd go down the Cape to Onset and go blueberry picking. And it was a little bit bigger than Black Portuguese. And that's where the title of my film comes in, some kind of funny Puerto Rican with a question mark, because every time I showed up somewhere, oh, and I'd married a Black American, so his family from Pittsburgh. And his family said, oh, Danny, he married some kind of immigrant, some kind of funny Puerto Rican. So that's how that title came about. So the circuitous route for me was through an odyssey, really, of the founding voices of Francophone African cinema. So I'm a protege of Ousmane Sembène, and FESPACO, which is the largest African film festival every 2 years. And I was part of the first group of African Americans with Haile Grima invited there in '85 by Thomas Sankara and Sembène. And that's where I learned about the Africans who were the pioneering mothers and fathers. Sarah Maldoror with Sambizanga were using film to tell a story of absent narratives of the ahistorical African past. I said, so there is a Cape Verdean story. My story does matter. And that became the engine, my soul food for the next 20 years was meeting the filmmakers of the diaspora, creating SPIA, becoming a major distributor of the work of Lusophone Africa and Mozambique and Francophone Africa, and then connecting with Camille Billups, a very famous printmaker, artist, sculptor of ceramics, but also a filmmaker. And it was Camille who emphasized to me the importance of archival memory. She said, if you don't have your history and write it, somebody else will. And so Camille Billups of the Hatch Billups collection is the one who became my madrina for some kind of funny Puerto Rican, but also the importance of archival memory, owning your archive. So between Camille, who is a legend of the Harlem Renaissance and of the Black art movement, Ousmane Sembène, Sarah Maldoror, and all the other pioneers of African cinema of the diaspora, that I learned the history that we fit in and had the confidence that it mattered, even if nobody else thought it was important. So I was careful about the grants I got. It took me a little bit longer sometime because who asks the question shapes the answer, and who gives the dollar shapes the content and usually owns it. So it's taken me a lot longer to create a pristine archive of collective memory, and I'm grateful for the journey. It wasn't easy. But if you're Cape Verdean, you know, that does not daunt you. It just makes you a little bit better.
Thank you, Claire. That's great. Sandeem or Christian, who?
But no, when you're talking about it's where the resilience comes in. The idea of an island people, you have to be resilient. You have to be creative. You have to be. I don't know. There's this exceptional spirit I always get when I meet other Cape Verdeans, and the way we approach life and our attitude towards life and towards each other. It's very hopeful, very warming. It's I think it's there in the title of the other exhibit, Morabeza. That coming in and the embracing. You have to forgive me. I'm not a very good speaker, which is probably why I go to art as my medium of communication. I don't know. Sorry, what was? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, we can go to you, Sandeem. I was just asking about other kind of parts of your experiences in your life that have formed your artwork, or other parts of other things in your identity that have helped to form the things that you make, kind of either transformational as someone who was young and first starting out in your career, or just in your own kind of visual identity, or what you like. Sandeem, you were gonna also.
I mean, I don't know if Christian want to finish or.
Well, I'll just say really quickly. A lot of my visual references didn't come from a Cape Verdean experience. They came from either European or African images and imagery. Sort of forcing them together, much like Cape Verdean people. You're getting African and European ideas coming together to form new ideas. I don't know if that necessarily translates in my work upfront and visually, but I think it's there.
I think I mean there are several moments that were very pivotal, but I think like for me going to art school was such a I almost want to say miracle because I was not surrounded by artists, or I grew up in Rotterdam South. They call it one of the hardest part of the whole Netherlands actually, but I think they're overreacting. But because I feel like here is where maybe that's has been one of the biggest inspirational, or the biggest how do you say that's also the thing. I have to translate in English all the time, so
Right.
so being raised here in Rotterdam South, where you're being surrounded by so many different cultures. In the building of my mom, there's like a Suriname neighbor, there's Turkish, there's Moroccan, there's like there's a whole mixture. But that was for me the first example of what the community really means, where you are aware of each other differences, but how can we enforce each other? So for me, just this building was, I think, one of the most important inspirational sources for me, where where I was confronted with all these differences and really curious to see like how cultures are formed, or the reasons behind it. I was always very curious and asked a lot of questions, and I think my parents were like, many questions we don't know how to answer. And I think as a kid I felt a bit frustrated about that I would ask questions about Cape Verdean culture, or things that I would see, especially if I mean we had like a lot of photo books, and then just trying to understand this other place where so many things are being referred to, or all these things they were saying about Cape Verde, and we hadn't been yet. So I think that was kind of like how it kind of started. But then when art school actually came uh, on my path, I don't think that was in the beginning. It was very overwhelming to be in this type of school where you could be who you wanted to be and just explore what you wanted to explore, and not not having anyone in your direct surroundings who knew about it. So I felt very isolated in a way. But then again, it was, I think, the best environment for me because I could really start to have this conversations with myself, things that I wanted to explore. Like, okay, what are things that I feel safe at art school to really dive into. But art school was also at the same time very at that time. Um, um, I don't want to compare it at all to how Claire was explaining to college time, but in a way, the teachers didn't know like certain topics or certain things that I was interested in. They didn't know how to guide it, or they didn't know, like for me, if I look at certain project that I started in 2000, I started school in 2007, and well, this is one project where I was very intuitive, but it was about embodiment and how the Batuku dance was like something that as a young kid I knew right away how to dance, but nobody taught me. And I think I did this performance video thing where I kind of explore that, but there was no guidance from school or from teachers who how to go on with that, this curiosity and trying to understand like what I was talking about.
Can I
So
piggyback on that? That is so important. I've been a professor for 43 years.
yeah,
Um, and it's a mixed bag in terms of education being both uh, a place to grow or also to not grow. And for
yeah,
those of us looking for validation, who as artists, where you're the only one,
yeah,
it's been very bruising, if not
mm-hmm,
destructive, for
mm-hmm,
that creative spirit, which is very private, where
mm-hmm,
you're either denigrated, marginalized, assumed that you don't have value, or, it's very reductive,
yeah,
particularly in art. Art is an artist, the specialized schools of training in film, fine arts, are difficult anyway as professions. And when you're coming in with a different
Mm.
fingerprint of
yeah,
your DNA, hoping to grow there, there's a naivete because you're young and vulnerable.
yeah,
And I've looked at in the 50 years since I left Fox Point and have managed to survive and thrive. And I thank my ancestors, God, and my Cape Verdean stubbornness. But I'm very humbled by the experience because I saw the devastation of so many of my peers who didn't make it through the cycle. Basquiat would be an example
yeah,
where you become a commodity
mm,
versus an asset to grow. And that can be
yeah.
very dangerous for us.
Yeah, and I think there is
Am
where
I
the
wrong?
resilience. No, 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 definitely not wrong. I think there is when the resilience came into play, then where you feel like either I can give up and just not feel supported at all and just not wanting to go further, but then I was also maybe that the stubbornness that was like, yeah, but I feel like very in my core that this is something that I want to follow. But I was very vulnerable. I mean, it was such a new world. This was not the way how I was raised, where you could just like really have a voice and explore and see. But I think the pivotal moment, the most important moment in my art practice was actually when I did an exchange program in America. I did an
Mm.
exchange program in Los Angeles. I mean, it was very different from Boston. There was no commute. But I think there, when I was removed from my environment in Rotterdam, from this place that I never left the city, that's it, and went there. And actually, also, who's this funny Puerto Rico was really that for me also there, because people would ask me like, where are you from, and I would always say, okay, born and raised in Rotterdam, but my parents are from Cape Verde Island. What is Cape Verde Island? So they would have all these questions that in a way I felt many of them I couldn't answer, like about the history and all these things that I felt like, in a way, I thought I should know. But then at that time, it was in 2009, it was like, yeah, I think then it became very important to find answers for these questions, because I felt like not lost or something, but it felt like as if you don't have like really a solid ground from to grow from. What is really the history or the roots. So I think when in America, there was this project, and that's one of the works that's actually in the museum, where I have this small photo of myself, this self-portrait that I did. And it was actually based off an assignment at school, and it was about found photography. That we had to go into the city and find a photograph. This was for a photography class, and then find a photograph in like a vintage shop or anything, or antique shop, and then try to create a story out of it, or try to understand the originality of it. And actually, it was really this thing of like, okay, this city is way too big. I don't know where to go. I don't know where are these things. And then trying to be like, okay, asking myself like, okay, what if I would find a photo? What kind of photo would love to find? And then this really honest answer came, like I would have loved to find a photo of my mother before she came to the Netherlands, because we don't have any of her photographs in our archives here of that time. And I think it was a very intuitive thing, and I followed that, and then all these things came then. Okay, who is then gonna be the person in this photo? And I felt like, okay, I think it should be me, because she lives. I'm part of her. She lives through me, and all these things. And also trying to understand, okay, when would this photo be taken? Why would this photo be? So, trying to
Name it.
visualize, yeah, trying to
Name
name it,
context. As
yeah.
visual artists, you're making me laugh and smile because B-roll is essential. I can't tell a story as a documentarian if I don't have B-roll, which are
Mm,
visuals, archival photographs,
mm,
footage. Most of my journey in the last 40 years has been getting ethically
mm.
acquired
Yeah,
photographs
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and archival footage, which I've restored. Because without B-roll, and that's been to our detriment as visual artists telling story, where is that photograph of your mother?
Has
Right?
never
So
been,
part
yeah,
of it
no,
is raising that question. You could do a whole exhibition on the absence of B-roll and the story that's told instead.
yeah,
That would be a
yeah,
whole exhibition.
yeah, yeah,
It would
definitely,
be a whole
definitely,
different story, but you know what?
yeah,
That would become the official story of the myth of the dark continent, the myth of
yeah,
the diaspora. That one
mm,
photograph that by default becomes inappropriately perceived as the dominant one story of us.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
danger of us.
yeah,
And
yeah,
right
yeah,
now, in this particular climate, for the good or bad, all of a sudden the Cape Verdean history and story has been elevated to new platforms. That's good.
mm,
But it's more
mhm,
than one story. It's
yeah,
more than one photograph. And even with opportunities that are here and presenting themselves in these new platforms, that's great. It's not being not trustworthy, but constantly pushing it and saying, but what's the next question? Where is that other photograph? And the story is still not complete.
yeah, yeah. I think that in my work, I kind of like
I
put
love that.
emphasis on that it's like that this is a story that I had, like, it's snippets of it actually. And in some projects, I kind of, especially in the new project I'm working on, I'm actually putting emphasis that we don't have the story. We've been robbed by this actually.
And that segues beautifully for me into the introverted kind of deep process of Christian in terms of how it germinates and becomes part of your artistic vision. I love that.
Sure. If I could piggyback on Sandeem's statement. Yes, when I was young and going to school, I was one of two people of color in my program,
Yeah.
and trying to find out where I fit in this art world, and going out to galleries and openings and museums, and all you see is white faces all around. Barely any people of color. Sometimes being the only one in the room. It's like, is this place for me? Is there a place for me as an artist to be in this environment? and then trying to find a reference point on which to build, and going back to self-reference as a place to be creative and a way to explore the medium. Yeah, I hear you, Sandeep.
Yeah.
I've been there.
In Hollywood, I'm the first Cape Verdean woman director in the world, but I'm not out on the
Yeah.
silver screen in Hollywood. And I love LA because most of my mafia that I call them, the Emerson Mafia, that have helped and supported me, Hollywood is an industry. It's not black or white, it's green. And our story
Yes.
does not have assets of a return on the investment. So as with the two of you, you've in art school, it's been me in film schools. It's me, I'm
Yes.
Clarity, as documentarian. I am not, Hollywood, I'm not a narrative that they want to tell. If I had chosen, instead of some kind of funny Puerto Rican, to tell a beautiful story about humanity, but instead focused on urban trauma, disruption, and psychological identity confusion, I would have been able to get to Hollywood. I would have been able to do that. I didn't want to do that story.
Yeah.
So for me, the screen, the Hollywood screen, and the culture of film as a profession and of training is the same as the fine arts. It's very suffocating, but you need to be there. You need to be in the belly of the beast to change it. It doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's the interesting part. Like, especially art school, I didn't have it also. I really navigated art school literally by myself, and years later, the professors apologized to me. They kind of be like, okay, we now understand. We were there for you, and you had to really do it by yourself. Because at a certain point, I also went back to teach there, because now they had like a department called culture diversity. So I was just looking at these students and be like, y'all are so lucky, to kind of like have now really this environment where you can really, bounce back and do all these things.
Well,
But
pay forward, both of you. Our
yeah.
challenge, we are survivors for a reason. That we were able to navigate through the raindrops, the three of us. And my hope is that all of us find a way to pay forward, either as mentoring other people, sharing this knowledge.
Yeah.
And there will be somebody like you that's waiting to meet you, Christian.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sandy, you only need that one meeting,
Yeah.
that one meeting that's transformative. Be the change.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
That I feel like is a wonderful way. You guys didn't even have to wait for the question. That was the answer. But what you want people to take away from this or your art or the conversation, and I feel like be the change, and paying it forward. But we are at the hour. We're at 1. I don't see any
Wow.
questions. I know, I went by
It went
fast.
so fast. Yeah, I was
Thank you
like,
for
yeah.
this lovely opportunity and gracious conversation, the New Bedford Whaling Museum, for being part of the change of a complicated history.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, we appreciate your time and everyone who's attended, and we encourage people to come to our next program about genealogical research on November 12th, and to come to see the exhibit if you have not yet had a chance. And I'll be in touch with you all later, but thank you for this wonderful conversation.
While the exhibit's up, please have a screening of some kind of funny Puerto Rican. It is the story of Cape Verdeans and the diaspora. Hello.
You're like, just saying.
Just saying. It is.
No, it is good. This will,
think I've
oh,
seen
wait,
it.
let me see. Yeah.
I can't resist. I am a Scorpio.
I mean, this is also why I invite you, so we can share out your work to people who may not know it already, and that's great. But thank you all again for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you. That was
It's
lovely.
wonderful.
Thank you for.
Thank you.
Let's
Yeah.
keep in touch.
Thank you for this
Keep in
wonderful.
touch. I'll send an email.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Keep smiling, walking on
Thank you all.
sunshine. With an hours.